tipping, flanging, and burring. I do most of mine in the bead roller, and these are the three dies that I use. A skateboard lower, this tipping die that I made that has it's a 16th radius, so this is an eighth of an inch diameter round over, and a hard lower wheel. In the Pull Max, I could use either one of these. The principle is still the same. It's just the Pull Max is slightly different technique because these are striking and it's not under constant tension when you're in the bead roller. I'm going to show how I do it in the bead roller, but the principles still apply to the Pull Max. Any one of these dies here could be used for tipping. Even this one that has more of a square edge than a radius, and these more pointed ones. That wouldn't be a bad one to tip with. Tipping is really 2 points of contact. One on your die, flat, where you're going to generate leverage off of, and another, the point that comes down that gives you a fulcrum to tip off of. And I'm going to do a couple of quick examples and show you how to keep a panel flat with different shapes in the tip, the burr, or the flange. And let's get to it. What I've done is I made 3 test panels, one of them with a straight flange, one of them with a concave flange, and one of them with a convex flange. And this will illustrate the distortion like we've talked about in the other videos of how the area at the edge of the circumference and the area on the inside of it at the tipping point can distort a panel. And you'll see why concave panels need stretch and convex panels need to shrink. And this straight flange, because the area on the outside and the area on the inside stay the same, it's just a change in form. It's just folding it over just as if we put it in the brake. So let's get to tipping. All 3 panels will be tipped the same way. I'm just going to do one of them to illustrate the technique. We're going to start with the skateboard lower and that tipping die upper. Now with the skateboard wheel, we can start with maxed out pressure. The skateboard wheel is going to cushion it and take care of all of that. Now in the Pull Max, what I would do is I would leave the panel flat and I would run just enough tension to where it scores the metal a little bit. And that'll be where my pressure starts with the Pull Max. As you can see, all it's done is scored a bit of a line and began a tip. And that'll be the first operation with the skateboard wheel and the tipping die. So now we've switched to the hard lower die. Before on the skateboard wheel, I was centered on it. Now I've offset that die to the inside to give me as much leverage as I could. And the same upper tipping die. I'm just going to bring enough pressure to pinch the material. And I'm just going to give it like 5-10 degrees each time that I go, each pass. You see I have a little bit of distortion on the end because of the path of least resistance. The material just wants to move there. But the panel is still flat. So I could just clean that up with a little bit of hammer and dolly, and you'll see there's no additional work that needs to be done to this flange. So the only thing that I did is hammered and dollied the corners to correct the edge distortion, but you can see the flat panel is tipped and it's still flat because it's only a change in form. It just folds right up to where it needs to be. The edge here has the same amount of material as the edge down here and the edge on the inside of the plate. Now on the convex panel, as you can see, like that drawing that I did with the circle inside of itself in another video, there's more material on this outside edge than there is on the tipping point. So what it does is it wants to distort it. It's too much material, so it's going to bow the part of the panel that was supposed to remain flat. And on the concave panel, the exact opposite happens. There's not enough material in here. And by there not being enough material, it just wants to pull that flat, and it created distortion in the panel. So let's go to the shrinker stretcher and we'll correct all these panels. So here we have the concave panel. We've already started to stretch a little bit. We're going to stretch the rest of this out and we're going to get the distortion out of this panel. Now the stretching operation mostly has to happen at the edge, not in here where we tipped it. So what we'll do is we're only going to go in maybe 2/3, maybe 3/4 in order to stretch it out and get it flat again. As you can see, it doesn't take much, and we've taken most of that crown back out. At this point, I'm going to do a little bit of hammer and dolly work just to tip that flange up that last little bit and then correct anything more. So I've done a little bit of hammer and dolly work just to tighten that flange up and make it 90. And you can see with that stretching, we've created a flat panel again. Now, I'll lay it back on a flat surface that you can see, but let's move on to the other panel. Now we have our shrink dies in and we have our convex panel. You can see I've already started to do a little bit of it. But let's continue. Same thing. Most of the work has to happen on the outside edge. So we don't really need to go in more than half, 3/4, 2/3 of the way in. We're just going to go nice and slow. It's very easy to over shrink and overstretch. One. Now we've reached the same point where I need to do a little bit of hammer and dolly work just to set this thing back up to 90 and to crisp it up and see if there's anything more needs to be done. So I'm going to do that off camera and I'll be right back. Here we are back at the bead rolling table, and you can see that the flat, straight flange, straight burr just needed to change in form. It didn't require any adjustments to keep the base panel flat. Here you can see our convex panel, which we shrank in order to bring the panel back into flat, and there's no wobble in it. And here you can see the concave panel. In the concave panel, we stretched to get the panel back to flat. And that's how we tipped, burred, or flanged an edge on a radius and kept the panel flat. I hope that helps. If any questions, feel free to post a comment.